Thanks to 41.
3,
36,
2,
no.
1.
Roll 45, take track. Let's go. Up stage left, down stage right.
8 seconds. 7, keep going. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and...
Send him, let's go. 35. Take, 31. Take, there he is, ready 3. Take, ready 7. Take, ready 6. Take, stage right screen, right in, ready font 3. Cue, nice joke.
Imagine taking your daughter to a doctor who turns his back to you and abuses your daughter right in front of you. Well, that's what happened to hundreds of gymnasts and dancers and athletes who last year helped put ex-Olympic doctor Larry Nassar behind bars for life.
Today on an all-new Dr. Phil, one of his youngest victims speaks out for the first time.
Larry groomed me my entire life.
This doctor was abusing my daughter.
He would violate you with you in the room.
The anxiety, the guilt.
Take me through the moment that it hit you that this was a predator.
Plus,
I didn't want even one victim to lose their voice.
You do not deserve to walk outside of a prison ever again.
the judge who put him behind bars. A Dr. Phil exclusive.
For decades, he abused children under the guise of treatment. And I'm talking hundreds. From small-town gymnasts and dancers to Olympians who competed and won medals for our country. Take a look.
Michigan sports medicine doctor, Dr. Larry Nassar, was hit with 22 criminal charges.
Dozens are also alleging sexual abuse by Nassar, saying he used his hands internally for what he claimed were treatments.
He was standing in front of me, and he had his pants down.
Nassar pleaded guilty to 7 of the counts against him, admitting that he sexually abused women and girls under the guise of medical treatment.
How do you think to count 2?
Guilty, Your Honor.
Nassar's admission of guilt means there will not be a trial.
The 54-year-old former doctor was ordered to serve as much as 175 years in prison for abusing young female athletes. Following days of searing testimony,
I'm possibly the last child he will ever assault.
the judge told Nassar he doesn't deserve to walk outside of prison ever again.
Well, today, one of the youngest survivors and her mother will share their story with me for the first time on television.
I saw Larry Nassar when I was actually pregnant and carrying Emma Ann. So as a single mom, she would attend my appointments with me.
Larry groomed me my entire life. When I'd go into his office, he would walk in through the door and be like, oh, like, how have you guys been? Give my mom and I a hug.
When he'd go on different trips, he'd bring her back little stuffed animals, little Olympic pins. And when Emma Ann began dancing at 3 years old, he was always asking, oh, you know, did you get pictures?
He would hang up my dance pictures along with all of the other, like, Olympians and gymnasts. So made me feel special, obviously.
Emma Ann began seeing Larry when she was about 8 years old here at this office.
I started seeing him for my back pain. My mom was in the room with me when Larry started seeing me.
During her exams, when I was in the room, she was fully clothed. He would turn his body and engage you in a conversation and be talking with her also.
He would talk the entire time to not let me focus on what he was doing to me.
He'd kind of like position his body so you really couldn't see anything.
I'd have like that weird gut feeling, but I always would push aside that feeling and be like, he wouldn't do that to me. It's Larry. He would never hurt me.
When I heard what happened, there's a tremendous amount of guilt.
Well, Emma Ann's story is featured in a new book called The Girls, an all-American town, a predatory doctor, and the untold story of the gymnast who brought him down. Now, I want to shamelessly plug this book because this is a courageous, courageous book, and it's a courageous story by a courageous young woman. So thank you both for being here. So tell me, you're the youngest victim that has come forward, and this is very hard to talk about, I'm sure. Tell me what the process was in deciding to find your voice on this.
Honestly, at first, I was hesitant to share my story just because of how close I was with Larry, and I didn't want to accept the fact that he would ever want to hurt me. But once court started and I started to listen to all of the girls giving their testimonies, it empowered me and gave me courage, and I realized that I have a voice, and this, like, I'm more than what he did to me.
Well, now, you had a very trust-based relationship with him, right?
Yes.
I began seeing Larry years ago,
Right.
and when I was pregnant with Emma Ann. So there's never been a time where Emma Ann did not know Larry.
Right.
And she grew up with him. He was just really, really good at developing this really close-knit relationship that you felt like he was family, but he was also a master of keeping a conversation. There was never a moment where Larry didn't stop talking, and he engaged you, which I believe now, looking back, was to distract.
Yeah, and he would keep you blocked.
Yes.
But he would violate you with you in the room. And this was all while this conversation was going on, right?
Yes.
And he would touch you inappropriately, and he didn't wear gloves, right?
No.
Okay, and there was no way for you to have any awareness. First, you go in with an expectation of trust because you'd known him for years, and he would position himself where you couldn't see. And what would you say to yourself about what was going on?
I felt uncomfortable at times, but if I ever did feel uncomfortable, I would shame myself for even having those thoughts, because why would an Olympic doctor, first of all, ever do that? Someone that's trusted and someone that has so much power and authority.
Yeah.
And second of all, why would someone that's known a little girl all of their life and seen them grow up since they were a baby till then and want to, like, hurt them and rip away their innocence?
Right.
So I would just always be like, he wouldn't do that to me.
So you had no sense that this was out of the ordinary because you had not seen 5 other doctors to know if there were other procedures, other methodologies or whatever that he was not following.
Yeah,
Okay.
they didn't have anything to compare it to.
So take me through the moment that it hit you. Oh my God.
Court was probably the biggest one. Court was definitely the biggest, like, hit me moment. I sat in court on a Wednesday, and it was my first day going, my first time even being in a courtroom. And I sat down and listened to a 17-year-old girl, so she was around my age. And everything she was saying and explaining about what he did to her just matched up, like, identically with what he did to me. I was mad. I was mad at him, and I was almost more mad at myself, I was mad at my younger self for not realizing.
Were you completely blindsided when she told you this?
When the stories came out in the beginning, I kept asking her. When I'd ask her, she would be like, no, 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 it didn't happen. And then eventually when she did tell me, I was absolutely like I was shocked. And of course, you know, the steps of grieving, angry, very angry.
And when you were saying, no, 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 it didn't happen, at that point, were you still in denial yourself, or were you just not wanting to admit it to someone else?
I was in denial still. I knew deep down that he did it to me, but I was almost like too ashamed for anyone else to know about it, especially my mom, because I knew that it would hurt our relationship, and I didn't want him to have the power to come in between our relationship.
Gotcha. So who does Leslie blame for what happened to her family? We're going to talk about that when we come back.
One time when Emma Ann was around 11 years old, we were leaving Larry's office, and she turned to me. Mom, does it ever feel funny sometimes when he touches you here?
Sometimes after I visited with him, I would feel uncomfortable.
Looking back now, I see the signs.
And later, Judge Rosemarie Aguilina became a polarizing figure in the case. You have been accused of bias. How do you respond?
Tomorrow,
Investigators have issued an Amber Alert.
a missing girl.
Do you think she's alive?
Yes.
Think she's okay?
Her mother.
I've talked to a lot of mothers of abducted children, and you're the most calm I've ever talked to. Are you involved in her abduction?
No.
Do you know who has her?
And after the interview, her friend's shocking revelation.
You think she may know more about what took place than she's telling?
A Dr. Phil exclusive. Then, on Monday, a fertility doctor who fathered nearly 70 children.
He told me the world does not need to know.
He violated 70 women. Consequence, 0.
New Dr. Phil. That's Monday.
Ready, effects to 41 in 3, 2, 1. Effects, roll 41, trap.
When I would go to appointments with Emma Ann, I do remember one time my mom was with me, and my mom just saying, I don't know if I like him. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she's like, I don't like the way he kind of turned her around and, you know, is turning his back. I'm like, this is the USA Olympic doctor. Do you know how many athletes he sees? She knew something was not right. And I wish I would have listened to her.
Well, Emma Ann's mother, Leslie, says Larry Nassar was a close, trusted friend and one of her doctors for over 20 years. But Leslie now believes he used that very relationship to groom her daughter. Take a look.
Looking back now, I see the signs that this doctor was abusing my daughter. When Emma Ann was probably about 8 years old, I remember doing laundry. There's like 13 or 14 pairs of underwear in here, and she probably was wearing several pairs of underwear, thinking that Larry wouldn't touch her. When Emma Ann was about 11, I remember just a change in her behavior. There's something just not right. And I remember having that gut feeling. That's probably when Larry was becoming more brazen with the abuse.
Sometimes after I visited with him, I would feel uncomfortable.
One time when we were leaving Larry's office, she's like, Mom, does it ever feel funny sometimes when he touches you here? And I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, you know, when he touches you on top. And I was like, well, yeah, you know, your breasts are there, but, you know, he has to be able to manipulate you and to get your ribs back. And I feel like I really missed it.
You know, we always say hindsight is 20/20. You look back and things jump out, right?
Yes. There's several times now where I'll be driving or just doing anything, and all of a sudden, it will all just come crashing towards me and to me that, you know, I wish I would have stood up. I wish I would have moved around. I wish I would have done this. And there's so much guilt that all of us as parents hold, and the regret. You know, I always had those talks about good touches and bad touches. I never thought I would have to have those talks about, you know, if a doctor does this to you and somebody like Larry that we trusted. She was probably thinking, well, this was happening to Mom, so it was okay. And I think that we just had a lot of, I don't know, the guilt, the anger, and, you know, just being very depressed, and the anxiety, and, you know, the spin-off, like either one moment she's having a bad day, and then, you know, me trying to rush in to help her, and then that spinning off. I mean, it's just the two of us in the home, and there is no other, and it's really crippled us.
Do you feel like you failed your daughter?
I absolutely feel that I failed my daughter, that I didn't see it and I didn't catch it. But I do realize that The only person that really, truly failed was Larry and the FBI and Michigan State and USAG and USAOC, because, first of all, USAG, the FBI, and USAOC all knew for at least 15 months. And who's holding them responsible? And those last 15 months, 2 years, were the worst abuse for my daughter.
So during the time that you know they knew what was going on and they were building their case, she was being molested?
Absolutely. Yes.
And thousands of others.
And thousands of others. I mean, this doesn't just affect her. This affects parents, siblings, spouses, grandparents. I mean, the waves that come, and, you know, this is something that we're going to have to live with for the rest of our life. And it just comes in waves out of nowhere.
Do you feel like your mother failed you?
I don't know how to answer that. I think I did at one point, but now that I've realized now that my mom couldn't have done anything. She didn't know anything was happening, and if she did, she never, ever would have allowed me to see him.
This is something that I've said to people that have been victimized before, because I believe it so deeply within my soul. The way we're victimized by these evil people is because our minds don't go to the dark fringes where they live. So your mother gathered information across years and years, and based on that information, made an informed decision that there was no evidence that this was a predator. And so her intention was to take you to a trusted professional that is really good at what he does, was really good at the con, and he did groom you, and he groomed you right along with her. All right, next, we're going to speak with another young survivor of Larry Nassar's abuse. How did it affect her? Well, she's been unable to listen to Emma Ann's story and has been pacing around backstage. We're going to meet her next and hopefully talk her through her feelings. We'll be right back.
Whenever I went to the doctor, I had major anxiety. One time, I completely dissociated to the point where I had snot running down my face and tears running down, and I had to be transferred to the hospital, where again I was facing doctors. I had the symptoms of abuse.
And later, there's a moment during this sentencing that ended up going viral. Did you mean anything by it?
It's garbage, I don't believe it, and I will have no one control me, especially a predator.
Ready, effects to 41. Yes. In 3, 2, 1. Effects. Roll 41 track.
In 2015, the FBI knew that Larry was abusing girls and did nothing. Those were the worst years of abuse for my daughter. I don't just blame Larry Nassar for what happened. I blame the U.S. Olympic Committee, USA Gymnastics, and Michigan State University. They sat on it while hundreds of young girls were being fed to this monster.
Well, one of those girls being fed to that monster was Grace, a ballet dancer who found herself in the care of Larry Nassar. She's also sharing her story on television for the very first time today.
I saw Larry from the age of 12 to the age of 18. Even though I kept seeing Larry, a lot of my injuries really didn't heal, and I think that was one of his ways of keeping us coming back for treatment. At the age of 12, I started having major panic attacks. When I was in class, it felt like I couldn't breathe, and my fingers would feel tingly, and I would lose control of my breath. A couple of times, I fainted from not having enough oxygen. I was taken out of school twice in high school to the hospital, and then I was taken to the hospital every year in college, but whenever I went to the doctor, I had major anxiety. One time I was at the doctor and I completely dissociated to the point where I had snot running down my face and tears running down, and I had to be transferred to the hospital where again I was facing doctors. I wasn't aware that what I was experiencing was abuse, but I had the symptoms of abuse. When I first read the article about Larry being charged, I knew it had happened to me, but I continued to push it away. I tried to scroll past any articles that I saw with his face on it. I tried to avoid any news stations that would remind me of that abuse.
The plaintiff says Nassar was aroused while touching her during an appointment.
Once I saw the sentencing and their impact statements, it inspired me to come forward as well and to tell my story. I think I always want to be strong. I am strong, but I think it's just understanding that emotion is strength too, and that's hard.
Well, Grace, I can only imagine that it's difficult, but I'm really glad that you're talking about this and giving it a voice, because he's not the only one out there, and talking about this and shining a bright light on it will keep thousands of others, maybe more, from being victimized in this way. What was your awareness of what you had experienced at the hands of this man?
While I was seeing him, I thought he was treating me. I thought he was trying to heal me so that I could get back to dance.
Can you identify now the first time that he crossed the line?
The first appointment.
The very first appointment?
The very first appointment.
What did he do that crossed the line the first time? And just generally speaking, was it inappropriate touching? Was it things that he said? Was it the way that you were draped? What was it?
Inappropriate touching.
Okay, and and this is with your wrist?
Yes. I thought it was osteopathic manipulation.
Okay, yeah.
I didn't know what that meant when I was 12.
Right. And where were your parents when this was going on?
They were in the room.
They were in the room?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and again, did he position himself where they couldn't see?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so this was a technique of his?
Definitely.
Okay. Take me through the moment that you admitted to consciousness, I haven't been treated, I've been mistreated.
I think I understood what happened to me when I read Rachel Denhollander's story. I think I know I avoided it and tried to push it down for the next 2 years until the sentencing, where I saw a couple of my friends come forward.
When did you decide to write a letter to the judge?
I decided to write a letter after I saw my friends speak and come forward. And they were friends I had danced with since I was 8 or 9 years old. And I think their courage and their voices were so important to the world, and I could see that. And I wanted to show them that they were important and show them that they were inspiring others.
We're going to meet the controversial judge.
Get her walking from the green room, ready, one.
Who told Larry Nassar, I've signed your death warrant. We'll talk about that when we come back.
And music for one is all.
I didn't want even one victim to lose their voice. You do not deserve to walk outside of a prison ever again.
Set the chair stage left. 5, get her as she comes out center aisle. 33 seconds, so let's get the tape going. Ready in 3, 2, 1, effects. Roll 41 track.
Nearly 100 women and girls who accuse the former MSU and USA Gymnastics doctor of sexual assault will share their remarks before he learns his fate.
I'm a victim of Larry Nassar.
I am still ashamed this happened to me. I felt anger, fear, sadness, anxiety.
The number of people whose lives you've altered does not stop at the victims.
I didn't want even one victim to lose their voice.
You do not deserve to walk outside of a prison ever again.
Well, Larry Nassar's sentencing in Ingham County, Michigan, lasted 7 days. Now, Judge Rosemarie Aguilina became a polarizing figure in the case, with some praising her compassion and straight shooting, while others claimed she showed bias. So this was a major, major case, and sentencing took 7 days in court because you allowed a lot of people to have their time in court, to give a voice, impact statement-wise, which thrilled me to no end.
I think it's the biggest gift that you can give a victim is to believe them and give them a voice in a safe space. And I've always done that for 15 years. The world just happened to watch this time.
Yeah.
And it was because of the bravery of these girls that that happened.
Yeah. And you guys don't know how much you're applauding that because, listen, judges have an endless number of cases. No matter how fast they work, there's just more coming. And to take the time to really do that, it says a lot. And God bless you for doing it. I just have to tell you. Now, when this first came across your desk, did you have any idea the magnitude, the depth and breadth that this was going to be?
No, if you look at the things that I'm involved in my life, I barely have time to watch the Olympics. Love the girls, but don't have that kind of time, and I never heard the name Larry Nassar, despite him being in our community. I had no idea what this case was about. And then when I learned about it, I thought it was going to be a malpractice case tied into a criminal case because I was assured, because I met with both sides, the attorneys on both sides, and I was assured that there were experts on his side saying, yes, in fact, this is a treatment, it's a breakthrough, and my dad's a doctor, my brothers are doctors. I'm always intrigued by the breakthroughs that we have every day, and I thought, well, yay, maybe this is a breakthrough.
Yeah.
I was interested.
So you have been accused of bias. How do you respond?
Well, first of all, both sides were mad at me. The girls were extremely mad at me because I put out a gag order so that I could have a clean jury. And then ultimately he decided to plead. And then he got mad at me because I made him listen to everyone. I figure if I piss everyone off, I've done my job.
Yeah. As one that studies body language, did you mean anything by it?
Oh, yes. I kept saying, and there's another crime, and there's another crime.
What I did in the state cases was medical, not sexual. But because of the porn, I lost all support, thus another reason for the state guilty plea.
Because the letter was written after Nassar admitted guilt, it led the judge to question whether he knew what he did was wrong.
Yeah, and what went viral about that was the
Yes.
toss of the letter. As one that studies body language and communication a lot, what did that communicate? Did you mean anything by it?
Oh, yes. I don't... It's garbage. I don't believe it. And you are trying to control me, and I will have no one control me, especially a predator.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And let me just say, it was 6 pages of, and I will not read portions or ever release it. I know the media wants it because nothing good will be gained because he blames all sorts of people, names, and there's nothing good to be done there. Yeah. But the rest of the letter, and I read a lot of it, is really, I'm a good doctor. This was treatment. And I had to ask him, over the objections of counsel, would you like to withdraw your plea? And he swallowed hard and basically said no. And I asked him, I think 3 times overall, would you like to withdraw your plea? Because he took no ownership. He wanted control back. And as fate would have it, he had 3 female judges, a female prosecutor, and a female detective. Hello, God, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
He He got the deal of a lifetime. Let me tell you, there were 26 counts. He pled to 7. They were life offenses. They also did not issue on pornography that they found on his cell phone. And if you watch the sentencing, I kept saying, and there's another crime, and there's another crime. And one of the things that I'm promoting, and I'm hoping that everybody will support, and I think you will too, is that every single time someone's touched, there ought to be a count, because that gives voice to the victims. They let all the girls down. That should have been every single count. And then if you plead it down to 7, okay, I understand plea agreements. But let's give 100% voice to the victims, say that we believe them, they matter, and let's show other predators, you do this, there's punishment.
Yeah.
Many lifetimes over.
Yeah. And when, two things, he has appealed, right?
He has appealed. He's claiming that I was biased, not fair and impartial. I think the world saw I was fair and impartial. And like I said, I pissed off both sides. I think that's fair and impartial. I have heard from people all over the world. It's done a lot of good, but I've also heard from people, some judges, who say, how dare you? Now we have to do this. You have no right being a judge. And I just hit delete. I think that's a good answer.
Yeah, that's a restrained answer.
Yes.
That's one of these.
Yes.
Okay, could Michigan State University have gotten away with paying nothing to the survivors of Larry Nassar? Well, we're going to meet another key player and hear what he has to say when we come back. We'll be right back.
Music, go one is all.
Did you face criticism?
The law was against us. There were several of my colleagues that suggested that I was ruining my career.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Up on 6, music. Ready, 4. Dissolve 4. Push Q.
Well, one girl after another came forward, all with the same story, accusing ex-Olympic Dr. Larry Nassar of sexual abuse. Another key player in getting survivors of Larry Nassar justice is attorney Jamie White. Now, he was the mastermind behind securing an unprecedented $500 million settlement for 332 survivors from Michigan State University. Now, I say unprecedented because there was really no provision for bringing this action. And it's true that Michigan State could have paid nothing, correct?
Arguably, there were significant issues associated with the statute of limitations. Most of these claims would have been time barred. The law allowed for anything within 3 years to be brought. Most of these claims were outside of that scope.
Did you face criticism for taking on such a big university?
There were several of my colleagues that suggested that I was ruining my career and that I was going to go broke. There were people within my firm that thought it wasn't a good idea. The law was against us. There's no getting around that.
What made you so passionate about this?
Well, first of all, 2 of the young women that I represented 50 of these women, and 2 of them were close family friends. I had known them since they were little girls. I'm a father. I have a mother. I have a wife, a grandmother. So for me, it was very, very personal. And this was my city, and it was my university. It was something that I thought needed to be righted.
Well, one person dedicated to making sure the world does not forget about the atrocities that Larry Nassar committed and the lessons to be learned from them is author and journalist Abigail Pesta, whose book, The Girls, is probably the most thorough account of this case. Abigail, you put your heart and soul into this. I said before, it is a courageous account, and people had to be willing to talk to you with no censor. This could not have been easy to do.
Well, as a journalist, I often write about women fighting back against crime and injustice. And I was very interested in this story because pretty soon after the scandal broke, I interviewed a young woman and her mother, Lindsay Lemke, who Jamie also knows, and Jamie helped me connect with them. And they told me that you know, here they were trying to sort through this. Lindsay had been a gymnast at Michigan State. She had been abused hundreds of times. She didn't realize it because she was a kid. And she and her mother sat down and said their family was coping with this realization, this terrible realization of abuse, and they were kind of getting blamed for it. People were, you know, friends on Facebook were saying, how didn't the parents know? Why didn't the kids tell? And I just thought, oh my God, here's this family dealing with this travesty, and they're getting blamed. And I thought, let's help people understand how this happened. And so Grace, Emma Ann, their courage, their bravery to tell these stories, that's what helps people understand, and that's how we stop this kind of abuse in the future. I don't think people realize he got away with this for almost 30 years.
Wow.
His very first survivor, she first met him in 1988. So she's in her mid-40s. Emma Ann, his very last survivor, mid-teens. That shows the range. And all of these women sharing their stories, they show how, through the decades, he managed to manipulate families, kids, the community. It pains me to hear Leslie say she blames herself. The blame is on the predator. And this book, these stories, these women's bravery, they explain how it happened, who enabled him, who didn't listen. Girls started reporting him back in the 90s to coaches, to counselors, to the police. No one believed the girls. They all believed the doctor. This is how things change. I just can't thank you guys enough.
So how can the survivors of this cautionary tale start healing? I'm going to tell everybody what I think about that when we come back.
And music, go one is on.
Coming into 7, Matt. Coming into 7.
Coming into 7. And fade.
One of the worst things in the world that you can do is give your power away to a predator. I mean, you know that, right? Because if you allow this predator and what's happened to you to define you going forward, then you're giving your power away to him. And you really have to put this not just on awareness, you have to put it on project status. You have to say, look, I've got to be aware that this is something somebody has written on the slate of who I am, and that's either going to stay there or I'm going to erase that and write something else there. And it's not enough just to erase it. You have to put something else there or it just keeps coming back. And there's very specialized help for that sort of thing. This guy will never take another breath of fresh air, free air, on this earth for the rest of his life. True?
True.
And, you know, I think old sayings get to be old sayings because they're profound. And the old sayings, the best revenge is living well, is a really good one. And the best revenge here is living well. And to live well, you got to be whole and you got to be healthy and give yourself permission. And I guarantee you, this will never happen to you again. And it'll never happen to a lot of other women because of what you guys have shared and been through. And God bless you for taking time to let those impact statements be read. Thank you for doing that. Okay. Well, I'd like to thank all of my guests today, and a special thanks to Judge Rosemarie Aquilina. Thank you so much. And to Attorney Jamie White, thank you so much. Abigail's riveting book, The Girls, is available now. It is a great read. And before I go, I wanted to share a tweet I received from @ShareDraw. They wrote, every man should treat women the way @Dr. Phil treats women. Oh. Thanks, Mom.
Can I just say thank you, Dr. Phil, for keeping the conversation going. It's an important one for everybody.
It is. It is an important one. And this, you know, Robin and I have talked about this, and she really was passionate about this as well. And that's why I treat women well. I've been married to a really good one for 43 years. So I love hearing from you guys on social media, so keep those comments coming, and you just might see yours on the big screen. We'll see you next time. Thanks so much.